All right, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I
Do you want to
really
start? Because
know.
we'll do the same thing. I'll do the male voices,
Yes.
which includes the other guy.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And it includes Gemma and Haley for me, for the
Yep.
girls. Chapter 2 Some Enchanted Evening.
Wait, no, that's chapter 3
Oh,
because we already
chapter
did
3?
chapter. Yeah,
Oh,
we did chapter
wait.
2 already.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I opened it at chapter 2 for some reason.
Oh,
That's
yeah, I
weird.
think that's what I was looking at. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Chapter 3 Weary, Feeling Small. Annie slammed her hotel room door behind her. She kicked off her shoes and slumped on her bed. She thought for a moment and pulled out her phone.
Hi, honey, the voice on the other end said.
Hi, Paul. Sorry for calling so late, but I met an old friend at the conference and only just got back. I've missed you.
It's you too. When are you coming back?
If I can finish early, I should be able to leave tomorrow evening, and we can spend the weekend together.
That's great, babe. So, tell me about this friend of yours.
Annie smiled wanly. Wanly. We were in a study group together. He was an ex-lawyer who crashed and burned after some ethical issues and needed to be requalified. After we graduated, he stayed on at Greendale as a teacher. He was at the conference with a group of his students. It was the first time we'd seen each other since I left, so we had a fair amount of catching up to do.
That's nice. You'll have to tell me how it went. How's the rest of your day? Did you knock him dead at the conference?
I think so, but nothing much else happened. It was pretty boring. I can't wait to get home and see you again.
Me neither. See you tomorrow. Love you, Annie.
Love you too, Paul. The following evening, Jeff Winger's apartment, Greendale.
Jeff
Looked
looked
at his. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jeff looked at his phone and the latest draft of a text message to Annie, apologizing for what happened and expressing the hope they were still friends. Garbage, he thought to himself. Just garbage. Like all the other drafts. Feeling disgusted with himself, he deleted it and put a key in the lock, opened it, and stepped inside with a faint sigh. He hanged his coat up, threw his keys on the counter, and was about to make himself a drink when the door to the guest room opened and a tall, slim redhead in a Colorado Buffalo sweatshirt and pajama trousers stepped out. Jeff looked up. Sorry, Callahan, did I wake you?
She held up a textbook and smiled. Doing some reading. Welcome back, Professor. She took a good look at him, then the smile faded. Geez, Jeff, what happened to you? You look like somebody died. Without waiting for a response, she walked over to the kitchen, took out a bottle and 2 glasses.
Jeff sighed again. I met an old friend in D.C.
Can't have been much of a friend if you're looking like that. She poured two scotches, one of which she handed to Jeff. He thanked her and took a long swig.
It was Annie, he said by way of reply.
She hesitated for a moment, then had a flash of memory. Ah, Prequel Mel, she said.
Jeff smiled wanly. You know, Abed refers to you as Reboot Annie.
And you know what I think of that? Oh, wait, sorry. And you know what I think of that. What does he know anyway, aside from everything that is? She smiled back at him. So how badly did it go for you to end up like this?
Jeff hesitated for a moment. He hadn't planned on being anything other than honest. He certainly had no particular reason not to be where Callahan was concerned. But he was realizing he was ashamed of his loss of control and had no desire to talk about it with anybody. So he thought of the next best thing he could say instead. It actually went pretty well most of the evening, but then we had a stupid fight and it ended with her storming off without even saying goodbye.
Jeff, you don't see this girl for how many years and then you fight? What was so important that you needed to do that?
It was stupid. Cop, defense lawyer stuff. Nothing important. I know I should apologize, but every time I tried to write a text, it didn't feel right, so I deleted it. I'm not sure I'm even up for trying to call her.
So write her a letter then. Jeff looked baffled, so she explained further. You know, old school, paper, pen and ink. You can dump as many drafts as you need and only send her the finished version. She'll appreciate the effort, and when effort you went to and read it with more care than a text or an email.
Jeff stared at his friend. Callahan, you're a genius.
Of course I am. I survived being taught by you, didn't I?
Jeff actually managed something close to a proper smile this time.
She picked up her own glass and took a sip of the scotch. If that's everything, Jeff, it is getting late.
Jeff nodded. Thanks, Mel. See you in the morning.
Good night, Jeff. She turned and walked back to her room, taking the scotch with her.
Good night, Callahan.
Paul Randall's house, Norfolk, Virginia.
Wow, babe. Paul had a huge grin on his face as the kiss finally wound down. If that's your way of saying, glad to be back, then I'm going to have to make sure you take more business trips.
Annie smiled up at him. Well, I am. It's also my way of saying I don't want my most recent memory of being kissed to be with someone other than my boyfriend. But Annie didn't say that. She also didn't say, and barely acknowledged to herself, that it lacked the sheer electricity of the earlier kiss. When that thought did cross her mind, she put it down to alcohol. The adrenaline rushed of reconnecting after such a long time and lingering memories of a teenage crush and firmly buried it. Come on, she said to her boyfriend. Let's get inside. We've got so much catching up to do.
The next morning, Jeff cursed, screwed up his latest draft of his letter, and threw it at the wall. The small pile of similarly scrunched up balls of paper testified to the previous dozen drafts that had met the same fate. He leaned back, stretched, and tried to massage away the stress headache. This is hard. Too formal, too informal, too sentimental, too rational, too everything. There's something wrong with everything.
He picked another sheet of headed letter paper off the pile and paused for a moment. He looked at the framed photograph of the study group taking at his graduation party, and especially the petite brunette in the front row, and smiled softly. As long as it takes. The reason why you're doing it this way is because she's worth the effort.
He relaxed, cleared his mind for a moment, and started writing again. He tried to keep a formal, respectful tone, but that only lasted the first few sentences, and then he was writing from the heart. When he finished, he read it through again, twice, and nodded. I don't think it's going to get better than this. Here goes everything. Before his courage could fail him, he put it in an envelope, sealed it, and carefully labeled it with the address on Annie's business card.
Annie was woken up by the morning sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. The first thing she noticed after that was that the sheets on Paul's side of the bed had been thrown back and he was no longer there. She yawned, got up, put on her robe, and headed downstairs. She heard music playing faintly in the kitchen and a masculine voice singing along. When times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. She smiled as she listened. Paul was a Simon and Garfunkel fan, though he didn't play it often around the house, as he knew she wasn't. He's a good man. Who cares for you? He deserves better than having you thinking about Jeff Winger. She crept up behind him where he was working at the stove and embraced him with all her strength, burying her face in his back. I love you, Paul. He turned around with a delighted smile on his face and returned her embrace. Love you too, Annie. He kissed the top of her head and pointed to the steadily growing pile by the side of the stove. Pancakes? Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. Professor J. T. Winger, Department of Law, Greendale Community College, Greendale, Colorado. Dear Annie, I feel I should apologize for contacting you with something so archaic as a handwritten letter, but following the way it ended last week, I felt it was the best way of ensuring that my words were appropriate, not open to misunderstanding, and above all, honest. First of all, I apologize for what happened. Granted, what we did is a difficult thing for me to regret doing, but I unreservedly regret putting you in a position where you felt embarrassed and uncomfortable, and that you had to leave immediately, so we were unable to say a proper goodbye. At the very least, you deserve a proper explanation. The truth of the matter is, I've missed you, Annie. Until last week, it had been almost 5 years since I saw you last, and I honestly thought I'd moved on.
I no longer had days where I thought the time was wasted if I didn't talk to you or see you smile. I no longer spent days wondering what you were doing or if you had ever thought about me, and if so, how. When I won a case in court or helped one of my students to find a job, I no longer thought Annie would be so proud if she saw me now. Then, you walked up to the speaker's podium at the conference last week. It was as though the last 4 years and 253 days, yes, I sat down and calculated it, were a dream that I was waking up from, and I realized what it was that was missing from my life, and spending the evening with you served only to clarify things. For the truth of the matter is that whatever else we were to each other, in a single letter is not enough to go into all the pain, grief, misunderstanding, and deception behind that phrase, mostly inflicted by me and suffered by you. You are always my closest and best friend for all the years we were at Greendale together. What I learned spending the evening with you is that one thing to have is friends, but quite another to have a best friend. I miss my best friend, and I miss Annie Edison, and it meant so much to have you back in my life, even for one evening. If the way things ended last week mean that you are unwilling or unable to say the same, then I can only apologize again and hope that one day you will change your mind and feel able to think well of me once more. Until then, I remain, yours ever, Jeff.
Annie folded the letter up and put it down carefully. No, Annie. You know it's a mistake to let Jeff Winger back into your life. You have a life, a job, and a boyfriend now. Allowing him back will only add stress to everything. It won't help anything. The right thing to do is to put this letter in the shredder, forget ever receiving it. Jeff isn't Blade, and you're not Britta. You don't have to run when he calls. This ends here.
Jeff was teaching a lesson about the Sixth Amendment in his summer school constitutional law class when he felt his phone vibrate twice. He willed himself to ignore it until he could dismiss the class. Then he pulled out his phone. He sat up straight when he saw who the messages were from. Trembling slightly, he put his thumb on the screen where it said Annie and swiped sideways. Of course we're still friends, doofus, the first message said. And it was 4 years, 25, 254 days. You missed a leap year. Eye roll emoji, the second one said. Jeff smiled and composed a reply. I'm a lawyer, not a day planner. Happy face emoji. All right.
Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Far away is close at hand. Jeff and Britta have a rule. Unless one of them is out of town for any reason, they meet up at least once a week for lunch, a couple of drinks, and some quality snarking. The second Thursday after Jeff returned from DC, they agreed to meet in a German-themed beer garden that opened recently. That it was a venture started up by two of Jeff's Greendale foosball rivals after they graduated. Is an irony lost on neither of them.
Uncle Jeff! Jeff grinned as the 3-year-old staggered across the grass toward him. He bent down, picked her up, and threw her in the air, catching her as she came down, screaming with laughter. Hiya, Munchkin, missed you, he said with a grin as she put her chubby arms around his neck. He looked past Taylor to Britta, who was trying hard to look disapproving, but couldn't help herself from smiling. Hey, babe, I got you a present, he said, handing her back to Britta and picking up the bag he dropped.
What the heck is that? Britta was gasping in disbelief as she put Taylor in her high chair. Jeff grinned. Is that supposed to be me?
I don't know. It's 77 years ago. Our fathers brought forth on this continent. It's an anatromic Abraham Lincoln. As Taylor has just worked out, if you press down on his hat, he recites the Gettysburg Address.
Britta tapped the hat again and it stopped. Taylor's face fell. That is quite possibly the most tasteless thing I've ever seen. And I've seen your DVD collection, Britta says, appalled.
That or a Barbie, and I know how you feel about that.
Give it here, sweetheart. Britta tried to take it away. Taylor clung on like grim death. Britta sighed. Okay then, but no playing with his hat, okay? Taylor beamed and nodded. She picked up a menu. Opened it and grinned suddenly.
What's so funny? Jeff said.
Do you ever find yourself wishing Pierce was still around?
Not often, but sometimes, he said, thinking of Silvio's, the old-fashioned gentleman's barber he visited at least twice a month. Why?
Britta, still grinning, passed the menu over.
Oh, Jeff said, as a smile spread across his face as he looked at the second page. July at the Old Bavarian Bierkelvar is Sausage Fest.
Followed by a list of menu options. A waitress walked up to their table wearing a traditional... Am I reading that right?
Dirndl.
Dirndl? With
so.
a low-cut blouse and overflowing bosoms. Guten Tag, ich bin Vicky, her name badge says. She went pale as she recognized them and then glared as though defying them to make something of it. They each did a double take, but decided not to, and Britta ordered beer and sandwiches while Jeff ordered the Sausage Fest special of 3 Bavarian sausages and a pint of beer. Britta got out a pot of fruit puree for Taylor. Oh, so something weird happened today, Britta said. I got a friend request from Annie across all my social media apps.
Yeah, she sent me some requests a couple of days ago, and when I accepted, she must have started to work through my contacts. Did you accept?
Dudui, she rolled her eyes at him. You must have made a favorable impression on her in DC for her to get back in touch after all these years. It's been, 3 years since she dropped us?
Jeff grinned. She had to drop social media when she joined the task force. What can I say? I've still got it.
I bet you didn't tell her about the redhead living with you, though.
Told you before, Britta. Mel is staying in my spare room while she spends the summer as an intern with Cuthbert, Dilbert, and Grubb. We're not living together. He made an air quotes gesture.
Ha! Britta looked skeptical. And I bet you haven't told Mel about kissing Annie in DC either.
Of course not. It's none of... Jeff stopped suddenly as he saw the triumphant expression on Britta's face.
You've been therapized. Sorry, you guys. You've been therapized, mister.
Seriously, Britta, no matter how often you say it, it's not going to become a real word. And I've never mentioned such a thing to you either.
Oh, come on, Jeff. An entire evening together for the first time in almost 5 years? Just the two of you revisiting the Jeff and Annie of it all? With nobody around to judge? There's no way you'd have the willpower to not try to kiss her. She was still grinning at him.
Was now looking distinctly out of sorts at being trapped so easily. Seriously, Britta, and I say this as someone who loves you dearly, but you've got to start smoking pot again. You're getting too good at this stuff now that you're not high all the time, he grumbled.
So tell me all the gory details then. Britta was still grinning.
Jeff sighed. Patient-therapist confidentiality?
Britta's smile went away. You're not my patient, Jeff. Oh, thanks, Vicky. Their food and drinks had arrived.
Jeff waited for Vicky to leave again. I'm serious, Britta. I've apologized, and Annie's okay about it for the moment, but she won't be okay if word gets out. She's got a boyfriend she wants to keep, and gossip about us kissing won't help.
If that's what it takes, Winger. Britta rolled her eyes at him. Deal.
So Jeff told her about spotting Annie's name as the replacement speaker in the conference program, meeting up with her afterwards for drinks, and spending a pleasant evening catching up and reminiscing about the past. How they talked about the debate. That was stupid. Transfer dance. Really stupid. And how it ended with the kiss and Annie running back into the hotel. Then, when I got back, Callahan suggested a handwritten letter would be more effective than a text or email, so I wrote one. It must have worked, because I got a text message from her a few days later saying we were good. We've exchanged messages a couple of times since, and now she's reached out to the rest of the gang, Jeff finished. Whatever you do, don't tell her you know. As far as Annie, as far as anybody is concerned, this conversation never took place. Understood?
Sheesh, Jeff. Britta's smile was well and truly turned upside down. Your secret's safe with me.
The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggle.
Jeff, why is Abraham Lincoln reciting the Communist Manifesto?
I heard some models had been hacked. This one must have missed the recall. I can get it swapped if you like.
No, Britta said with a smile. I think we'll be keeping this.
They'd just finished dinner, and Paul had offered to load the dishwasher and tidy up in the kitchen, leaving Annie temporarily at a loose end. She picked up her tablet, smiled at the accepted friend request, and opened an app and started typing. Do you want me to be Britta in this case?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yes. That'd be great. Hi, Britta. Just wanted to say thanks for accepting my friend request and sorry for being quiet so long.
It's okay, Annie. It's just good to have you back. Jeff told me about how busy you've been.
Did Jeff talk about anything else?
Just that you had a nice evening catching up, that's all. Smiley face emoji.
Was that all?
Yes, why? Did anything else happen? Smiley face emoji. Wink emoji.
Either she knows or she suspects something and is trying to get me to confess by pretending to know. Annie, however, had been interrogated by people far more professional than Britta as part of her FBI training, so she decided to change the subject. Just one thing. Are you sure about that username?
What's wrong with it? My name's Britta and I'm a therapist.
Britta the rapist? 5 minutes later.
Winger is a dead man.
Smiley face emoji. Oh, Britta, don't tell me you took advice on your social media presence from a guy who designed the anus flag.
But it made so much sense when he first explained it.
This is Jeff, remember? It always makes sense while you're listening to him.
I'm still cutting his liver out and feeding it to my cats, though.
Just a warning, but it's usually regarded as a bad idea to confess your plans to murder someone to an FBI agent. Wink emoji.
You know him. If anyone's going to believe it was justifiable homicide, you would. Smiley face emoji.
Just make it look like an accident, okay? Laughing emoji. I've got to go now. Sad emoji. Albert's show is starting in a few minutes. Goodbye, Britta.
Bye, Annie. Anything interesting, babe? Paul said.
My old friend Britta accepted my friend request. I was just saying thanks and chatting with her.
This is you rebuilding your contacts after the FBI made you delete them, isn't it?
They're friends, not contacts. But Annie just nodded.
Come and sit down. Paul smiled and tapped the seat next to him. The show about your college years is about to start. Annie walked over and curled up next to him. Paul rested an arm across her shoulders.
Oh, catch, Professor. Callahan tossed the beer from halfway across the lounge. Jeff snatched it neatly out of midair and unscrewed the cap.
Thanks, Mel. She sat on the opposite end of the sofa from Jeff and stretched her legs out so that, like his, they were resting on the coffee table. As the opening theme tune started, she reached her bottle out to the side and clinked it against Jeff's. Their arms were so long, neither of them needed to move to bridge the gap.
Opening credits. As the lively theme tune plays, a series of student IDs for the fictional Innsmouth Community College passes over the screen. In this way, we get our first glimpse of Jim Crocker, Barney Atwell, Antonio Fontana, Karim Malik, Hannah Morse, Carla Gordon, and separated slightly and within, starring Kelsey Grammer as Archibald Rowan and guest starring Ben Chang as Dean Dean. The music comes to an end and the title card Second Chances fades out as the focus changes to a study room with the lead characters sitting around the table.
Annie's prediction to Jeff had been accurate. She did indeed find it difficult to watch the show the same way, knowing that Jeff had slept with Hannah Morse. It wasn't helped by the fact that this was going to be the debate episode and she'd forgotten to warn her boyfriend.
Sorry. Paul, there's something...
Babe, let's watch.
Well, I did try. Did she really do that? Callahan said.
Oh yes, said Jeff, with a soft smile on his face as he remembered. Letting her hair down like that was the first time I realized just how hot, frankly, Annie could be. I could hardly stay in. Yep, there I go. Crocker had just fled the scene. Did you really do that? Paul said.
Annie was cringing slightly. I didn't get that close to him, did I? Well, I let my hair down, of course. But I didn't rub my boobs in Jeff's face, and he didn't look like he'd been punched in the gut either, she said. He hates me, yet he caught me. Oh wait, sorry, that's
I guess he hates me, yet he caught me. Man is good, Cranburn cries out from his position in Jim Crooker's arms. The camera switches to Hannah Morse, whose face is pale with fury. Suddenly, she strides forward, seizes Crocker's arms in both hands, and kisses him. Crocker abruptly drops Cranburn and puts his arms around Morse's body and crushes her to him as he returns the kiss, matching her intensity in full. The auditorium goes silent. Suddenly, Morse pulls away.
He was horny, so he dropped him. Man is evil.
Victory to Innsmouth, the moderator cries as the audience erupts.
Did she really?
Oh, yes.
Was it really?
Oh, yes. When Annie decides to do something, she goes all in. No holding back. Jeff had a faraway smile on his face. Did you really? Paul said.
I'm afraid so, Annie said quietly. She was cringing into herself slightly. Abed didn't seem to have taken many liberties with that scene, but watching it was so different to doing it. Were we really that intense?
Paul's arm left her shoulder. And this was the guy you met up with in D.C. the other week? His voice had acquired a dangerous tone.
I took that kiss for the team, she said faintly. It wasn't because we felt anything like that about each other. It was about winning the debate. I couldn't think of anything else to do.
Well, it certainly looked like you enjoyed yourselves.
Annie sighed. The thing you should remember, Paul, is that yes, Jeff was a player and he knew how to kiss. Paul grunted unhappily. But that was 10 years ago, and he was much older than me even then. We never did more than kiss. It was Britta he slept with. I was always too young for him. These days he's well and truly retired from that sort of lifestyle. His idea of a wild evening is more likely to involve hot cocoa and Scrabble than chasing girls.
Sorry, Annie. It's just, Paul had started to relax as Annie said her piece. And on the mention of retirement, his arm had gone back around her shoulder. What the?
Croker and Morris are in the yard outside the gym. They are smiling at each other.
Took me by surprise, Hannah, he said. And you know I never do my best work when I'm surprised. I'd really hate it if you thought that was my best work.
Oh, Morris squeaked suddenly as Croker gently took hold of the point of her chin, tipped it upwards and closed his mouth over hers. The kiss this time was soft and unhurried. When they separated, Croker had a gentle smile on his face, but it was Morse's turn to look stunned.
Good night, Morse, Croker said as he turned away and strolled off in the direction of the car park.
Hannah Morse said. Fade to black. End credits.
Hell, Jeff said. That never happened. She was only 18 at the time. Couldn't even bring myself to hug her afterwards. I'd never have kissed her. He furiously reached for his phone, opened up his Twitter app, and started typing. Callahan watched as his sudden outrage with an expression of wry whimsy on her face.
That never happened, Annie squawked. He wouldn't even hug me. He patted me on the head. She turned to Paul with a shocked look in her eyes. You've got to believe me.
Paul looked at how distressed she was. It's okay, Annie. I believe you. Relax. He smiled at her.
She felt her phone vibrate. Something had arrived on Twitter.
Professor Jeff at Greendale CC. What the hell, Abed? Followed only... Go ahead. You can be Abed.
Followed only a minute or so later by Abed Nadir at CA Productions. If you didn't kiss her, Jeff, you should have. It's not my fault if reality doesn't match up to the standards required of fiction. See? Annie said, showing her phone to Paul. Even the guy making the show admits it's fiction.
Babe, you have the weirdest friends, Paul said. We really do need to have a talk about just how well you knew this guy, though, now that he's back in your life, he said with an edge in his voice. I don't want any more surprises like that.
Annie sighed. It was exactly the sort of jealousy she'd been afraid of when they sat down to watch the show. As I said, Jeff's much older than me, and that's all ancient history now.